Hey, it's Callan from Authentic Lifestyle Design, and today I want to talk to you about spiral dynamics stage green. So, this is the sixth stage in spiral dynamics. I would highly recommend that if you're stumbling across this video to look back at the previous videos. I've got a whole playlist and a whole series on spiral dynamics. It's a model of developmental psychology originally created by a guy named Clay Graves, and then that research was put together and added to by two guys named Chris Cohen and Don Beck. So the acknowledgement is really for them for coming up with this model. I just want to talk to you about it. So spiral dynamics is a model of developmental psychology. It's one lens we can use to look at different stages in the development of individuals, but also the development of groups. And as far as lenses, it's definitely one of the more powerful ways I've discovered of looking at developmental psychology, and there is tremendous value to it. I've found tremendous value in this model in my life. I've known about it now for about 5 years, and it's a highly valuable, highly useful model that I really recommend, because you can kind of see where you are as long as you're ready for it. You can see what stage you're at and what's beyond you and what's behind you and how to go back and integrate previous levels, and there's so many benefits. But yeah, you really have to watch my introduction to spiral dynamics video to get a foundation of the model before exploring this more advanced content. Okay, let's have a look. So spiral dynamics stage green. Let's have a quick little overview of this stage, okay? Now, we came from orange, which was very materialistic. Orange is about climbing the success ladder and materially acquiring a lot and requiring a lot of money, a lot of success, a lot of notoriety, all these other things. This is a massive thing for people at stage orange. They want to really build up their egos and to become these big personalities and be well known and loved by everybody, right? And then the downfall is that orange sometimes can hurt people during that climb in order to get ahead. So, for example, that could be a business dumping their waste in a non-effective way without caring about the environment. That could be someone laying a bunch of their employees off for some unethical reason. It could be someone running someone's business into the ground because if they're a competitor. And other things like this, where people are making more money and they're becoming successful, but they might not necessarily be doing that ethically. They might be hurting people. That's the main drawback of orange. And it's very materialistic. So when you get to green, all that materialistic success doesn't really matter as much because you've moved through it. And this is a quick little overview of green. So if you can see, I've got the little protest photo. I thought that was relevant. It's fight today for a better tomorrow. And I think that's a pretty good summary or a pretty good quote of how green works. So green really focuses on relationships. So they're not focusing as much on material success or status, or they're not putting themselves in hierarchies and comparing themselves to everyone so much. They are focusing more on their relationships with other people. And in a way of love, in a way of, wanting to be close to their family and their friends and the people they work with and the people they associate with and to meet new people. And green, they're definitely people. You can get introverted green and they like, being with their small group of people, like-minded people. And then extroverted green will just go out to music festivals and have crazy parties and they'll want to be everyone's friend. So they're very outgoing people and they really do benefit from relationships. And there's more of a focus on relationships than success and the things orange held as valuable. Green's more, do I have good people in my life and am I enjoying the time I spend with them and things like that. They've seen through the illusion of materialism and that money doesn't equal happiness, and that there's a threshold of so much money and beyond that your happiness just isn't going to change, right? They have learnt that lesson either through experience or through seeing what it does to other people. But either way, they've transcended it, which is a credit to them. Green's about 10% of the population. So orange was about 30 to 40%. Green's 10%. So it's a much smaller pool in the world. Okay. Now, Green focuses on community. So that's not just their little group either, that's the global community. They really care about the welfare of all human beings on this planet. And they'll fight for that. So they'll fight to level and remove any inequalities or hardships any way they can, where they believe they can make the world a better place. They will fully dive into that, and they'll try really hard to build their ideal world where everyone's kind of equal and everyone is respected and valued for what they do, and a lot of things like that, right? Green focuses very heavily on humanitarianism. So Green are often those people that'll go overseas to volunteer and build a school or to teach or whatever it is that needs doing. Green are like you, very often your teachers and your nurses and kind of your caring people in society that are doing these sort of jobs. Psychologists are another good example. Therapists, social workers, HR, people that really like working with people, right? And people that really like building relationships with a bunch of different people for a bunch of different contexts. And Green will thrive in an environment like that. Okay? And then the final thing is focus on experiences. So Orange was focused on stuff, on money, on success, on travel. And even when Orange travel or they do chase an experience, it's all over social media. They're showing everyone about how good they are because they have to flex everything they do on social media. Right? That's a very Orange thing to like vlog every trait of your life. Orange do that a lot. Because again, Orange really like the acknowledgement of a bunch of people. When Green, they like that, but they don't chase it as much. They don't validate their own happiness or their own self-worth based on what other people think of them, which is great. So they focus on experiences. They live to help others, to make the world a better place, and to have experiences. And that's where they will spend money. So Green love to travel. Green love to explore different cultures. They love to expand their minds in that way. They love to experience different foods and different experiences, different music. You know, Green does like to explore. And again, relationships. So that exploring often is around people, not things. So Green probably doesn't care as much if they get a picture in front of the Eiffel Tower and things like that. They're going to Paris, you know, they'll get the picture because it's there, why not? But they're more interested in mingling with the locals and getting to know the culture and meet people. Okay. Now let's have a look at some of the pros of Greens, because all of these stages, they have pros and they have cons. And Green does have a lot of a lot of pros, because it's a massive jump from Orange. And it's a very different way of thinking, because Orange that was very egocentric or thinking about yourself and your own success and building yourself up to something. Green, like I said, is more community focused. So you're focusing on how can the group or how can humanity become better? And how can we all mutually do our part to create a better world that's not just good for the people at the top, but it's good for everyone, right? And there's no one stuck in wage slavery or bound or a slave to debt or, you know, a bunch of other things being exploited in so many different ways. Green really want to try and cut all that out of the world. That's their big ambition. Right. Relationships become deeper at Green. So yeah, Green's about relationships, but they do become deeper. So for example, Blue, if you're going to a dinner with a bunch of friends that are at stage Blue, it's going to be very black and white talk. It's going to be about the weather. It's going to be about what's on TV, the sport. It's going to be about the culture. If you got kids, it'll be about the kids, like about Charlie's soccer game or whatever else is going on. But it'll all be small talk, right? It'll be very surface level conversation. Then Orange, you get that too, but now you get brags and you get people maybe doing business together or talking about different things in the market or talking about having a bit of an ego flex. You'll see a lot of ego flexing at Orange, people trying to show everyone how good they are, right? So you can get a table of a bunch of people trying to flex on each other and compare themselves and a bunch of other things, and there's pros and cons to that. Green, it's more deeper relationships and deeper questions. So a bunch of green people sitting around the dinner table, The conversations are going to be more about feelings. They're going to be more about ambitions. They're going to be trying to lift each other up, to motivate each other to go and achieve amazing things. And the conversations will really draw more in that direction. So people will have deeper conversations. They'll talk about their feelings. They'll talk, say, for example, they had a breakup. Two green people will really go into detail about that breakup and talk about all the little bits and pieces and what they learned and how in love with someone they were. And yeah, they'll really open up to people they trust. And two people at green can have some really beautiful conversations, right? And they really open up their hearts in ways that is a bit trickier on lower levels, or that people don't open up as much until they get to green for varying reasons, right? Next one is that systems are more fair, right? So orange, it's survival of the fittest, okay? It is basically dog eat dog. It's the best man wins, and there's little consideration for the people in society that lose this game for varying reasons, be they intelligence or disabilities or even laziness. But people that are losing this game and they're struggling, okay? These people aren't really considered in the orange world. If you ask someone at orange about homeless people, they'll just say, oh, they don't work hard enough. They're probably addicted to drugs and whatever else. When there's more to it than that. More often than not, some people just get dealt a heavy, difficult hand in life that results in them being homeless. That's not always the case, right? And green really wants to create systems that are more fair. So they're all about universal basic income and free healthcare and, all these other things, looking after the environment, helping people as best they can. Because green want equality, and that, in green's opinion, can often mean taking some money from the rich and funneling it down to everybody. And that's sort of where many people at green do enjoy ideas like socialism. And it's not to be confused with communism, which is a blue idea. So a lot of people, they compare communism and socialism because they look at communism and Stalin and other examples of dictators that were very blue, and they were very black and white, that one way had, the world had to be a certain way, and if people didn't agree, they had to get out of the way by whatever means. The green version of socialism isn't really like that. It's about trying to make the world as equal as possible. Yeah, and it's about really trying to have a world where everyone has equal opportunity. Doesn't matter what race you are, what gender you are, or different traits like this. And green really believe in giving everybody an equal shot. Right? And yeah, rather than the extreme of communism, which is everyone is absolutely equal. Socialism is more, we all have equal opportunity. Right? And a lot of money due to high taxes and other things in socialist countries, where a lot of that money from the rich, because the rich, they sit on a pile of gold and they know how to invest it, and they just keep compounding their wealth. That doesn't happen as much in socialism because there's different means and different things where that money is distributed to the lower classes. And your opinion on that's completely up to you, but I'm just speaking in generalizations. Okay. The next one is people really look out for each other. So someone at green, if they got a friend and they know their girlfriend dumped them or whatever else, they're going to ring them up and they're going to have a chat, and it's going to be a heartfelt 2-hour conversation, and they're going to go deep because they love to talk, they love to connect. People at green really love to talk, and they love to connect with each other and have these open, heartfelt journeys together. And yeah, it's really good in that respect, right? Because people they look out for one another. They will really help each other, and they will really care about each other. Similarly to how blue will, but for green, you don't necessarily have to be in their group for them to look after you. And they're a bit more open-minded about it, and they're a bit more emotional about it. They're doing it because they really feel it, and they really want to help you from their heart. When at blue, it's the right thing to do. This is the right thing to do in the society. So it's just another layer of depth on top. Next one, and I think this is a great one, is that people are less materialistic. Because materialism, especially to the extremes, people wanting to have a big house and a big car and to go on really expensive holidays and all the rest, often leaves them in slavery, usually doing work they don't want to do in order to maintain that lifestyle. And the idea of consumerism and the materialist paradigm is that you're working in order to buy a bunch of stuff, which is good for the economy, right? But when you get to green, people are less materialistic, they're more minimalistic. So all of a sudden, they don't need a big house and a nice car and to spend heaps of money traveling and to do all these things. They can live way more humbly. They just need a roof over their head. They need a means of transportation. They want to travel. They want freedom. They want time. They want good people around. And they're not chasing, and they're not trying to impress people. They're not trying to buy a nice car to drive down the street revving the engine to show everyone how much money they've got. In Green's opinion, that's just silly. That's just like an ego flex. That doesn't solve anything, right? And yeah, it's a very different paradigm because they have sort of stepped out of that materialist machine that Orange is in, or Blue that are passive consumers just doing their thing, and then Orange are the people trying to climb to the top of that pyramid. Green almost step outside of the pyramid because their ideas of success and their ambitions become different. They become more about how they feel, about the people in their lives, about are they enjoying their day, are they enjoying how they spend their time, things like this. Are they passionate? Are they doing something in their life they're passionate about? And they'll explore things more along these lines, more emotional based. Or if Orange is like hyper masculine, then Green kind of swings the pendulum back to being very feminine, more flowy, less logical, more feeling. Right. And the last pro I've got here is people begin to experiment with alternative lifestyles. Because they do. Until this point, they've basically been living to the ideals of whatever their culture is. And that's either as Blue, where they're just doing their thing, or Orange, where they're trying to climb to the top of that pyramid. At Green, people start to explore different cultures and different ways of living. And they understand, they're like, well, I could make $100,000 a year being some high up engineer working 60 hours a week. And I could do that for 40 years. That's one option. That's more or less what a lot of people aspire to do, is to be in the rat race. Green more so goes, well, what do I want to do with my life? And they think a little more openly about that. And that could be anything. That could be traveling. It could be wanting to work remotely, be a digital nomad. That could be, anything along the means of travel, relationships, talking to people. Green will often sacrifice money for lifestyle. So Green will happily earn less money if it means they can live a more fulfilling life, right? I know I'm a little bit like that with things I'm going to do in my life, where it's not so much about the money. Like, the money is a vehicle to survive, but being rich for me, it doesn't really matter, I don't think I'd live that differently making, 70, 80,000 a year and $500,000 a year. I don't think my happiness would be that much higher if I had the $500,000. Yeah, and it's about how you're making your money. What are you doing, right? So I think someone in Green would say they're a musician. They'd much rather make $50,000 a year as a musician and maybe work a part-time job at a supermarket or something. They'd much rather do that than work 60, 70 hours a week as a lawyer and make double the income or triple the income, right? So it's a different way of thinking. And then you get some people at Green that completely step out of the system and they go join some alternative culture. Because there's alternative cultures and alternative lifestyles all over the world, right? And there's heaps and heaps of them all over the world. There's all these different communities and stuff. And I guess you'd have to be careful with cults, and plenty of people at Green can fall into cults. But yeah, there's so many different ways to live. It's basically, if you can think it, and it's possible given the laws that we've got here, the laws of physics and stuff, as long as it's possible to build, you could go build it. Or maybe someone else has built it and you can go and join. So Greens start to think more openly like that, which is why you've got hippie communes and all sorts of different things. Now, I've really talked up stage Green, but it does have cons, because all these stages have cons, and some of the cons at Green are pretty full on, and you're seeing a lot of them in the world at the moment. Right, the first one is that people can become too emotional and less logical. Now, there's a sweet balance between logic and emotion. Usually, orange goes too far logical, doesn't feel enough. Then green can actually go too far the other way. It can be too emotional and less logical. And that's where they're trying to solve problems unrealistically. So, for example, they're saying, all right, we need to go full solar and wind and all this, right? Which we do eventually, and we will, because we've only got so much fuel, and we know that fuel does various things to the environment. Overfishing's another example. All these things. So we know that humanity has to step up its game in looking after the planet, okay? But going all solar tomorrow, say if all nuclear and coal and gas and all that was turned off tomorrow, it'd be a disaster because we don't have the technology yet, we don't have the infrastructure yet. And that's going to take time to develop that, right? So, or solving problems like, oh, you should just, and then saying other things, or, green will go off at someone at blue, because say green, some far left wing person, will go off at some hardcore conservative who's a blue, or, like a hard orange like Donald Trump or something, and they'll essentially tell him, to be green. But you can't force people up the spiral, If someone's a hardcore conservative, black and white thinker, they're just going to see you as some crazy hippie that's, doing nothing. Say you're a musician, you make 30 grand a year and you're a hippie. For someone at blue or orange, they're going to look at that like you're basically wasting your life, You're not attributing to society in the ways they perceive to be valuable. And green they can get really angry. They can get really angry, especially at people that aren't on their level or that don't believe the same things they believe. And some of those beliefs are just, but then some of them can go ridiculous as well. It's like, where's the fine line, for example? Like if you want to talk about genders and how people are saying that gender's a social construct, right? And whether it is or isn't, again, that's up to you. It's up to your own opinion. What do you think about gender? Could there be an infinite variety of those, or is there just male and female? Up to you. But if you're a green, you decide that there's, 100 genders or however many, then if someone doesn't agree with you and they say, no, there's strictly 2, and they try and tell you that, for green, that can be triggering because that can be limiting and that can trigger them. Or, people that aren't into gay marriage. There's plenty of people, especially at blue, that didn't agree with gay marriage, and they're essentially, all marriage is a sacred thing. You say they're a Christian, it's between a man and a woman, and it has been, and that's how it is. And then someone at green could get triggered by that because they're going, oh, this person's not open-minded, they're so stuck in their old ways, and that can annoy green a lot. And things do change with time because people do often get stuck in their ways as they get older. So, the progressives in 50 years will look at the progressives now that'll grow older and their brains will calcify and all that stuff. They'll become locked in their ways, and it'll be the same thing over and over again, right? People will constantly push new ideas. Or it might be we go really far left and then another generation comes up more right wing. So it's a really interesting, right? Another con is people can shun all lower levels of the spiral, which is kind of what I'm saying. So green, they look at the at orange as like greedy materialists, greedy people that are taking more resources than they need, and they really shun them and point out all the negatives of stage orange without understanding that stage green also has negatives. And they're not aware of the spiral, so they're not critiquing stage orange, but they're critiquing the system or the machine or capitalism or enslaving people in the rat race and all that. They're demonizing that, when in reality that's what most people do. That's how most people live. So they do demonize that a little bit, and they can shun them. They can shun people. And blue, they just look at blue as like sheep or like pawns of the elite. So it can get a bit like that. Red, they just look at them as violent, mad people. Alright, so they're looking at all the cons of lower stages without acknowledging the pros. Because, for example, green could benefit a lot through integrating more blue, because green, like I said, can go more feminine and become more about feeling. So to have some of the principles in the black and white structures of blue would be valuable. Or orange, maybe there's plenty of people at green that, for example, they'll just sit around smoking weed or doing nothing with their lives, or just doing like half-ass philosophy, and they might benefit from integrating more orange so that they'll go off, government welfare or whatever they're on, and they'll contribute to society in whatever way they choose, but they will contribute. Right? So there's heaps of different ways to look at that, but green do shun people that they deem to be below where they are. And that's 90%, or not, yeah, that's about 90% of the population, so they shun a lot of people, and that's why they tend to talk negatively about the system and to see holes in it. And the final one is that people can struggle to be assertive at green. So some can, you get protesters and they're peacefully doing their thing, or sometimes it even gets violent. But green people on average, especially introverts, they struggle to be assertive. So if somebody is giving them a hard time or someone's treating them unfairly, they will sometimes be very low or very high in agreeableness where they won't defend themselves. And that can lead to many negative impacts throughout their life because they can get a little bit walked on. Or having their heart so open and being so kind, people at orange or whatever can take advantage of those people. And, someone at green might fully open up and care and show a lot of love to somebody and then be betrayed, and that betrayal is really going to hurt someone at green for whatever reason or whatever type of betrayal it is. So yeah, people can struggle to be assertive. They can struggle to assert their goals and to get in someone's face because they don't usually want to walk into conflict. They're generally pacifists and they don't want to hurt anybody. But through integration of red and orange, right, of the warrior phase and the materialist phase, getting success and stuff, you have to learn how to be assertive. It's an important trait of being a human, because if you don't have a level of assertion in you, then you'll simply be walked on. And a lot of green people, unfortunately, are walked on. And too, because they're not seeking power, they usually aren't working the most high-tier jobs, so they might just be pouring your coffee or whatever it is, and they might have a boss that just walks on them, and they're too passive to actually stand up to their boss or whoever else it is. So that's another con of green. Okay, let's have a look at some examples of stage green. So the first one I've got here is hippies. Hippies are like an extreme green, because a lot of them, they've ducked out of the system or the mainstream 9-to-5 rat race. They've kind of skipped out of that, or they dance on the edge of it. They're all about free love, free hugs. If you haven't been to a hippie music festival, go, because they're really, really fun. They're loving people, they're fun people, right? There's some really awesome cultures, and yeah, the amount of free love and good vibes you see if you hang around hippies are incredible, right? And there's downsides to hippies as well, and there's different types of hippies. Sometimes I'll say I'm a functional hippie, which is I'm sort of in the 9-to-5 orange world, but at the same time, I'm sort of my own person, and I like to think I'm a relatively free thinker, right? So hippies are one example, and they're a great example of green because they do just do their own thing, and they've got things like chase your bliss and do what feels good, and love everyone, treat people well. So hippies are great for that. Then we've got animal rights activists. So these are the people that run around, making sure that animals are looked after. A lot of them will give up eating meat. They'll go vegan or vegetarian or whatever. They don't believe in animals being slaughtered for human consumption. Not some do, but most don't. And if they do believe that, then they believe that should be done ethically. Animals shouldn't be locked in cages and all these things, right? Every living thing should be treated well. And that's a very green mentality, where blue and orange aren't really thinking as much about that. Orange is purely thinking about productivity, about making the most money, and then blue don't think too much about it at all, unless it's in their face, say animal abuse, unless it's directly in front of them. They won't really acknowledge it. They'll just turn a blind eye. Right, and you'll see that if you go into third world countries where there's more blue, you'll see animals locked in cages and people will walk past and just deem it to be normal. So I remember in Southeast Asia, I saw a lot of that, it'd be 35 degrees, humid, horrible weather, and you'd see a dog in a cage where it could barely move around, which is a shame, but that's the part of human development, and we're moving up slowly. Next one I've got is protesting, because green love a good protest. Again, they're very emotional, so going and getting the signs and walking down the street and protesting whatever they want to protest. Yeah, it's a very fulfilling thing for green, and they do feel like they're making a difference doing that, and they usually are because they're getting heard. The news, if 1,000 people protest something, it'll probably get on the news, and whatever their message is, it will get spread, right? And that could be a positive or negative thing they're protesting, and depends. And there's plenty of people at green too that don't even know facts, they just want to get on the bandwagon, especially university students and stuff. They just want to jump on the bandwagon and go to a good protest and maybe have an after party. Just enjoy it. It's almost like a hobby. It's almost like a fun thing. A fun thing that they're passionate about and they care about, but still it's a bit of fun. It's something they gain fulfillment from doing. The next one is Scandinavia. So that whole part of the world is probably the most green part of the world. And you can see that because it's a little bit more socialist. The taxes are, quite high. The wealth gap is less. They've got things like free healthcare and free education and all these things. So everyone does sort of get a good start. Their education is some of the best in the world. I remember studying uni because I'm a teacher. They talked a lot about Scandinavia because there's some revolutionary stuff going on over there. And yeah, there's a lot of green in Scandinavia in a bunch of different areas. People are very chatty, they're very free, and all the rest of it. Like the average, for example, look at a more capitalist country like the United States. The average Scandinavian is going to have a higher quality of life than the average person in the US. When the rich in the US, because it's all the money goes to the top, or a lot of more money goes to the top, the rich really live a high life in the USA, when in Scandinavia, that wealth gap isn't as much because they are more green and there's some more socialist aspects to them. Next one I've got is Burning Man. So Burning Man is essentially a festival where they light a huge man on fire, like a big wooden man. They light him on fire, and it's super alternative. So you usually get a bunch of people from all these different alternative lifestyles, and they're usually green or beyond. You get some orange there too in the corporate world, but it is a lot of green and beyond going to these sort of things, where people just go and vibe in a very, like they almost invent their own culture and their own society for a week or however long it goes for. And they trade, there's not really money, it's all trade and different kinds of music and different kinds of performance and stuff that you wouldn't really see in the mainstream and that the mainstream probably wouldn't even appreciate. They really expand their minds in lots of different ways at festivals like this. It's all free love, it's all flowy, it's again quite hippie and very feeling orientated and very good vibes. Violence and stuff isn't tolerated and it's shunned if someone was violent. So Burning Man's a cool example. Then one I touched on is minimalism, that's living cheaply. And especially one of the key understandings of green is that if you can live cheap, you have a lot more freedom. Because if you're not chasing money, or if you're spending less time chasing money, that's more freedom you've got. And if you're content with just simple things, having a roof and food and maybe some travel, then yeah, you'll be pretty happy, because then you don't have to work as much in the rat race. You don't have to work 50, 60 hours a week. If you can live on 40 grand a year and say you get a full career, say you become an engineer, you make 80 grand a year working 50 hours a week full time or whatever, cut that in half, work part time as an engineer and make you 40 grand a year. If you can live on 40 grand a year, then all of a sudden there's an extra 25 hours a week you can do whatever you want with. And plenty of people are doing that now. I know, for example, there's a lot of gamers at Green and people that play video games and just kind of chill out doing that. And some of these people, you could call them lazy, but really they're pulling their weight, because usually a bunch of people that are gamers or whatever they are, musicians, depends, they'll all move into a house together, and they'll just work part-time doing various things, and they'll spend time on their craft or gaming or doing whatever it is they want to do. Like a lot of people that are creatives, they can't make a living doing their art, so they do work some other job. But if you talk to these people, they're usually relatively happy because they get to do what they love, even if they have to spend 20, 30 hours a week working a job they're not that into. That's what I discovered really young. That's with teaching. It's that I can build this coaching business and I can do this and make videos and things, and I can work as a casual teacher and still make pretty okay money. So I could work part-time as a teacher and do this part-time because I am definitely a minimalist. I don't chase the fancy, expensive things in life. And because of that, there's freedom, you know. There's less debt, there's more freedom. More freedom to do what you want because you're not paying for expensive things. Next one is free hugs. This is just a fun little one I threw in there. Giving people hugs, showing love to everybody. You know, just hugging people because they're there, because they're human, and you just showing them some love and some good energy. So, free hugs is always good. And then the last one I've got is feminism. And feminism could really be replaced with any other social justice type things. But feminism's a pretty good one because you can look at how women were treated 100 years ago compared to how women are treated now, and it's a lot more equal. At least in the West, it's a lot more equal. And, you know, women have the freedom, you know, they can work if they want, which most do. They can work part-time or full-time. They can have kids and do that. So, yeah, it's came a long way. It definitely has came a long way. But then you could replace feminism with something like racism, and the same thing. Look at how, for example, the average, African American was treated 100 years ago, and look at how they're treated now. You know, 100 years ago they had to sit at a certain spot on the bus, and there was different bars for different races because they didn't mingle as much. And it is amazing to look back at that. Or if someone's homosexual, same thing. Have a look at how homosexuals were treated 100 years ago and how they're treated now. Again, super different. Society, for the most part, is really tolerant now. And so they should be. There's nothing wrong with that lifestyle. It's people can do what they want. Right? But 100 years ago, it wasn't the norm. People were blue and black and white. They're like, oh, that's wrong. That's a sin. That's not what God wants. Or whatever else their reason be. So there's a couple of examples of stage green. And finally, I'll talk about how to transcend stage green to stage yellow. Now, this is a big jump, right? Now, I've said they're all big jumps, but green to yellow especially is a monumental leap. Because green's about 10% of the population, yellow's about 1%. And yellow is where you integrate and incorporate all these previous stages and more. And you become a super integral thinker. And it is crazy. You start to think it's called three-dimensional thinking, and that's where you can hold different viewpoints at once, and you become extremely open-minded. And you can think things that you just can't think, or you can't even put in your mind until you get to yellow. So here's some ways to get to yellow, like this superhuman awesome level, which I do see so much value in yellow. It is amazing, and I'll talk about that in detail in the next video, because if I started now, I'd just keep going, and I'd say it will be quite a long video, because there's so much to talk about with yellow. So here's a couple of things. Start trying to integrate the pros of each stage of the spiral. So if you are aware of the spiral, which you are if you're watching these videos, have a look at all the videos I've made or other people have made, and have a look at all the pros they talk about, okay? And try and integrate them. So like I've said, green has pros, but often green is passive and they won't live the pros of red or orange because they think red and orange are using violence and power and then striving for success. These things are bad, right? Like green. When at yellow, good and bad are completely subjective. Good and bad, there's no such thing as good and bad. It's all subjective to your mind. So you start looking at that when you're at this kind of level. And yeah, try and see all the pros of previous stages. So red, warrior mentality, fighting for those things you care about and all the rest of it. Blue, having a society, having rules and structures and hierarchies in order for a system to function. Orange, being ambitious and wanting to climb the pyramid and all the rest of it. And then green, where they are when they're moving into yellow, which is all about, loving people and being free and being nice. You're getting all of that and you're pulling all these pros together and you're acknowledging all the cons and all the different ways people live, and then you'll start to open into yellow because you'll realize your opinions are just opinions. There's no divine truth to any of it. All your opinions are just opinions. They're all based on your upbringing, your culture, and your experience. That's all they are. That's what yellow will start to understand. Ask yourself deep and challenging questions, right? So simple things and deep stuff that would trigger people, right? That would trigger anyone that's not at yellow yet. For example, let's say, okay, what are some great things Hitler did? What are some good things he did for the world? Or what are some amazing things that Trump did while he was president? What's some really good things Trump did when he was president of the United States? That's going to trigger people. Because did he do anything that was good? Well, did he? I don't know. You have to look. Have to look into it. Yes or no. It all depends on your opinion. And then you understand your opinion on Trump is just an opinion, right? And someone with the opposite opinion that loves the guy, if you don't like him, then they got the opposite opinion. And for whatever reason. So look at what's a great thing Trump did while he was president, right? Or if you lean the other way, what's a great thing that Joe Biden's doing as president, right? And you can look into all these different things. The horrible people. What's a good thing this terrible person did? Or what's an awful thing that this great person did? Say you worship someone, like you really, really like someone, all right? I don't know who's a good person, like, I don't know, Morgan Freeman, I don't know, got no idea. But they say, oh, what's a really awful thing Morgan Freeman's done? All right? And you're like, no, he can't do bad things, he's a good bloke. It's like, well, he probably has done bad things in his life. So you start to look at it like that, okay? Asking challenging questions. Or science, right? You could ask, and again, this is mind-blowing, and it's going to spin your head around. What if science is just a dream? Or what if reality is just a dream? And we're in a simulation, and science is just a construct of our mind, right? Now, if you can't bend your mind, which most people can't because they're not a yellow, they're not even going to consider something like that. They're going to be like, well, that can't happen because physics and this and that. Right, because that's the way your mind works. But at yellow, you can conceive, even if you don't believe things, you can hold them in your mind and truly analyze them without bias. So asking questions like this is going to help you to get there. Next one is to develop the ability to hold multiple viewpoints at the same time. And this is going more into that. It's you can hold two different viewpoints at once. So you can have multiple opinions too, and those opinions can change and be contextual. So your ego or your personality becomes way, way more flexible, and you become way less rigid in the way that you think, because there's no absolutes anymore, right? You realize all your opinions and worldviews and everything, it's all just opinion, right? All of it's just opinion. That's what you start to understand at yellow. And that's deep. And from yellow, or from this level of open-mindedness, that's where innovation really happens, because people start to think of ways that haven't been thought before, and they start to bend their mind to challenge the norm of what everyone think is possible or what everyone's doing. They start to challenge that. Okay. And again, this is deep stuff. The next and last one is to develop a flexible and highly adaptable personality. So this is where, like I said just before, your personality isn't rigid, it's flexible. You have multiple shades to it, and you acknowledge that you've got multiple shades to it, that you're a different person in different situations, that you a year ago was a very different person to who you are now, and you stop to cling as tightly to it, right? For example, if you held a worldview and all of a sudden you want to explore something, someone below yellow would just not explore it because they tell themselves not to, when someone at yellow would say, well, what if? And they'll go have a look. And yeah, it's very experiential and logical. And yellow are going to love modeling. They're going to love wanting to model and understand everything as deeply as possible. So I hope you got some value out of this video. And I hope I did stage green justice, because we're starting to get into the more advanced ones now. There's two more, yellow, which I'll make a video on, which again is going to be a really advanced topic. And if you don't understand it, that's fine, because you'll get there, you'll build up to it, especially if you follow the videos I'm going to send out, because the demographic I'm hitting with authentic lifestyle design is yellow, or pulling people to yellow. That's sort of the level that this channel is at, and the sort of topics we're going to pull about. Lifestyle design in general is a very yellow sort of topic. It's like green and yellow, or orange, and there's different versions of it, but I think yellow is where it really starts to shine. So these videos ideally should start to pull you into an open-mindedness and that deeper level of thinking. And then I'll make a video about turquoise, but turquoise again is a whole nother level, and this channel isn't specifically going to go into turquoise teachings, just because they're so niche and they're so advanced that most people aren't going to grasp them. Like, if you want an example, like Leo Gora's actualize.org touches on some of these, and they're very advanced topics. So we're mainly going to hit yellow with authentic lifestyle design. We're going to get you into that 1% of people that can really openly think, and they're really openly flexible to whatever. So yeah, stay tuned. If you gain value, give this video a like, comment, share it with people you think it'll value, and I'm going to keep pumping out videos, and I'm going to keep doing my thing. So besides that, I hope you enjoyed it, and enjoy the rest of your day.